Diane from House Quilts, and today we're continuing on our talk about quilting quilts. And I have some examples done with the long arm. We have a good friend Jo who does fabulous long arming, and I have a couple examples of her work here. A long arm quilting machine, if you don't know, is giant. It can be 10 feet, 12 feet. It takes the whole room in a house pretty much. It's this big long thing. You put it on, you roll the quilt down, and you either custom do everything where you stand and sort of drive it, or you punch in a design on the computer, or you buy a design from the computer and kind of turn the computer on and it goes. And sometimes there's a laser beam that you follow. You look here and it's sewing down over here and you're kind of following this laser beam over here. Pantograph is just an all-over design, and it's an easier one to do, and we do it real frequently with some of our samples. So I have my first example here, shows a pantograph. A pantograph is the same design that's just repeated over and over and over, and it usually goes in rows, and it can be a small design or a big one, but it's just the same thing repeated. It shows up, whoops, we keep getting threads on these things. It shows up well on this red, not as much on the beige, but it is the same design over and over. So this is kind of fun to do. And sometimes, well, not just sometimes, but the long armer has the option of choosing the different designs they want to do. So we have a fun one. We love our packers. You can have a lot of fun with the pantographs that get picked too. They can be very generic or they can be very specific. They can be theme specific, design specific. So we have our beautiful Green Bay packers with a lovely helmet and football design. It works really well for college or for pro, but we've had so much fun with this. Throw in some stars because of course your team is your star. So it's another example. You can just go on the computer with the long arm and pick a design and put it and make it fit the style of the quilt you're doing. Then there's also custom long arm quilting. And this is obviously not a panogram, not programmed in. This is something that's done by hand. It can be very intricate or not. On here you can see there's this kind of a fleur-de-lis swirl that fills the corners, and a little adaptation of it there. Along over here we have some tight stippling, which is, there's just hundreds of little stitches right here, and what they do is make this feather show, because when you quilt real tightly around something, it pops up the fabric next to it. So we have this gorgeous feather coming around here, and there's so much tight stippling in here that the flowers really pop. The corner of this, it's the same image as we had over here, but a little bit smaller. So you can adjust it. The computer can take the same image and then adjust it different sizes. So you kind of tell it the size of the space it's going into, if it's a square, if it's a rectangle, and then the computer does the math to make it fit the space. So we've talked about lots of different styles of quilting. We've come from hand quilting, gone to quilting on your own home machine, up to long arm quilting. Anything is acceptable. You kind of decide what fits your budget, what fits your needs for the quilt you're doing. But the magical thing is that at some point, that top, batting, and backing all get joined together, and all those pieces become one quilt, one unit, and it's a beautiful thing to have. Happy quilting from House Quilts.